Hey guys, welcome to OCD Real Talk. I think it's been a while since we've been four people on one. I don't know. Because in the last few we've done have been like just two people or three people. So it's nice to have a kind of like five entities because we have Maha's cat as well, technically.
Yeah.
Um, wait, what's his name? Latte?
Latte. He
Latte.
looks like a latte.
He looks like a latte.
You
Yeah.
should have called him Momin. Why don't you call him Momin?
Please, like Momin is not a good, even I would say Momin is not a good name for a cat. Mom is fine, Mo is fine, but Momin is like a bit too
It's
formal.
also different. It pronounced differently in Arabic and Pakistani, right?
Yeah, because I think like
Yeah, so it's weird saying it in English to me, like moment, because I know what it sounds like.
yeah, because other no, because at home as well we say like Momin, but like I've heard Arabic people say like Mo'min, so there's
Yeah.
a like bounce to it. But anyway,
Do you
Maha,
guys know the meaning of it?
do you
No.
know what it means?
Well, what's the meaning of it?
It
It's
means
the
like
opposite of moment.
yeah, it means like someone who's a true believer, and like really faithful guy. So yeah, it's a really good meaning. Anyway, guys, so we were going to talk about fear of rejection, because we haven't covered that on a real talk. Elliot brought it up, and he said we should like discuss it. It's been a while, so yeah, because it's obviously like one of the most common questions and one of the I would say probably like top two, top three fears with core fears with OCD. Um, Sam, I'll start with you. Like, how often do you have to in a week? How often do you have to discuss rejection on a one-to-one call?
Oh, good question. Um, I say the majority all relate to rejection,
Hmm.
right? Unless you've got your obviously existential fears and so on. But the majority, the taboo related fears, all kinds of contamination fears, anything that you can think of can link to rejection in some kind of way. And also, I just want to cover a different point here, and I'll go back to sort of the initial taboo themes. But what you'll find is that as you're actually becoming more rational and more accepting in your thinking, another way that fear of rejection got on with me, it was like, oh my God, what would they think of your new beliefs? Right? Because obviously,
Oh,
as I was breaking down the taboo related themes and I was seeing it rationally, breaking it down, not being as black and white, not catastrophizing it, just trying to gain a different perspective on all my different fears, I was like, shit, what is if other people don't agree with my new beliefs or new perspectives? So it got in on that angle very craftily. But anyway, yeah, so the main ones, POCD, harm OCD, all links into that. Okay. Fear of being rejected your whole life. So not just rejected once, what as if your whole life is full of rejection and you can never, that overgeneralized thinking, you can never be friends with anybody again or would never find a partner. So yeah, it comes up a lot, Moment. And that was the main crux of my suffering, fear of rejection and life
Maha,
being ruined.
like I know like relationship OCD was one of your bigger ones. Did you have like harm OCD as well at some point?
I did, yeah. I didn't realize I had it for a while
Hmm.
until Rob pointed out. It was mainly like
Don't harm that cat, mama.
Yeah.
it was mainly around my family.
Hmm.
Um, Thinking that me, doing what I wanted to do in life, like following my own choices, would harm them, like would, cause my mom to die, because that was like the norm for them to say.
And
And I didn't
and
know.
that's also like a very brown slash Muslim thing as well, just by the way. Like in with
Yeah.
parents and grandparents, they can be over dramatic with things and they'll be like, if you do this, like I'm going to kill myself, or if you do this, like I'm going to like have a heart attack and die. Like literally people say that. And so for a lot of brown people, like that becomes like a very real
Yeah.
fear that if I do something, then it'll cause my dad or mom so much stress that they'll die.
But
Yeah.
you get so numb to it until you have OCD, like because it's like such a known thing, but when you have OCD, it's very different. It becomes a serious thing.
Yeah.
Um, so that was the harm OCD. I truly believe that me being away from my mom would actually cause her a heart attack.
Mm.
Um, that
Wow.
was the main one, but I had some like images and like things of harming people, but that came in after I got really good at acceptance, so it didn't really cause so much of a trouble for me.
Right. right?
Mm.
Elliot, like fear of rejection, what was your biggest like struggle with it?
Yeah, so if you saw me at sort of just at the start of my HOC journey, right, and just maybe sort of a year in, I was obsessed with being one of the gang, right? I'd try and wear the similar things to what my friends are wearing, the designer t-shirts, going to places, going on holidays, which I didn't necessarily want to go on, but it was just to fit in, right?
Yeah.
And you can really see that across like the HOCD. Like I was just so obsessed with what other people thought of me. I think maybe where the background that I'm from, I'm sort of from like London, and I've got sort of a lot of like, male figures around me, like my dad and my family and my friends, they're all sort of, geezers, so to speak. So it was all about fitting in,
Geezers,
right?
mate.
And so that say again.
Geezers, mate.
Yeah, exactly. So it was all about fitting in, and if you deviated from that, you sort of felt like, oh shit, I'm on my own here. I'm not part of the crowd, and it just laid the path of HOCD to set for me. That was the biggest part of my fear of rejection, societal rejection, and the fear of self-rejection as well. Like, how could I
Yeah,
possibly
big one.
accept myself if this was true? And yeah, so that you had those two elements for me, and that took a while to break down. The shame attacks helped me so much. I disputed it a lot, but until you actually behaviorally show that as well, then you're not going to progress. So
Imagine if
that was it for me,
Elliot,
Momin.
imagine if Elliot was a chav. Like that would be like a completely different world.
Yeah.
Momin, I
Yeah.
just got a question to turn to you. So with contamination OCD, when
Mm.
you were really stuck with that, did fear of rejection play a part in this?
Not really.
No.
Honestly, like with contamination, it was just a fear of being really depressed and miserable in my life. That
What about if you contaminated other people?
No, that was never a fear for me either. And
Okay.
like for me, it was mostly just centered around my own. So for me, I think like fear of rejection really played up a lot with relationship OCD,
Right,
because that
okay.
was kind of like my second big theme, and also then real event OCD as well. Because I mean, I
Yeah.
much later I realized that I had real event OCD as well, very strongly for like a good decade. Because there were like a bunch of things in my life that I was really obsessing over, and I was like, I don't know if that person remembers that that happened. I don't know if they still, think of me in light of that event, and do they still, think I'm this way or that way because they
Yeah.
witnessed this, like, like that kind of thing. So relationship OCD real event was like a huge one for me where it happened, but I would say like for me, just as equally in some specific context where fear of rejection was strong, because I don't know. It's a strange thing because externally there was a certain element of completely having no care at all what people thought about me. Like I could just like stand in the middle of the street and do stupid things. I kind of like didn't care. But there were like very specific situations and specific people whose rejection I was afraid of. But then just as equally, I would say the fear of me rejecting myself was
Yeah.
huge for me.
That's the main one fueling everyone's, isn't it? It's
Mm.
that self-rejection, never
Yeah.
letting yourself off the hook.
That's where the chronic guilt and shame also comes in for people, right?
Yeah.
Which is that I don't like, even if other people reject me, sure, but like, what if I'm not able to live with myself at the end of the day? Because like people might love me or whatever, but still, if I'm not
Yeah.
comfortable in my skin, how can I go on?
That was massive for me as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
How did you find out that you have self-rejection? What was the moment for you? Because I thought about it before and I never like heard you guys talk about it, like when you didn't talk about it before.
Yeah.
And I thought like, is it just like me or is that a thing? Like I'm actually rejecting myself. And it's so interesting because in that same like month, you posted something about self-rejection and how you can't stand, regretting things or having bad record.
Yes.
Uh,
That's
I was
such
like,
a
that is so like, oh my God, I can relate to it so much.
that's
Yeah.
such a good point. Yeah, I realized mine when I was getting better at applying compassion to others. So I'd be looking at people who are living my worst case scenario, and I could tell I was making shifts in how I was viewing them as human beings, all the factors at play as to why they did wrong or whatever. Let's say they were in jail, for example. I was good at applying compassion and understanding. If I tried to apply it to myself, it was just blocked straight away. I just got jammed. I just couldn't get through. And that was because this is where it takes a lot longer, unconditional self acceptance, usually, because you've got the guilt involved. You've got all the emotions involved, right? It's not just look at somebody over there and apply compassion. It's because you're living with yourself day to day. So it's that just takes time, doesn't it? How long it takes to fully get under that. But it's realizing that, hang on a minute, what's my belief here? My main belief was that you don't deserve to be let off the hook. No matter what anybody said to me, it was me. I don't deserve to be let off the hook. I can't let myself off the hook. And that was a problem. But that takes a lot of time to get under that.
Yeah, I think with me with the self-rejection, a lot of it was like my self-talk, that inner dialogue saying, yeah, you're a bad person. You don't deserve to be let off the hook. And it's very black and white. And yeah, like you said there, Sam, it took me a while to gradually sort of break that down. But that's how I sort of knew I had self-rejection, and as well, when I wasn't being true to myself, when I was trying to live the life of other people and not what I wanted, that was just telling myself that what I want isn't enough and I've got to cater to the demands of other people. So that was another sort of way that I was
And
self-rejecting.
Elliot, with HOCD, because obviously you've got the fears of what happens if you come out one day, right?
Yeah.
So with the self-rejection with that, was it being sort of never accepting of your true self, if you wish? Let's say if you were homosexual, never being accepting of that. So
Yeah,
constantly rejecting yourself if that were true.
yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, it came back to my sort of my cultural and societal beliefs that I
Yeah.
can't under any circumstances be this certain way.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
so conditioned, like gun barrel, to be like this. I can't be anything else. And
yeah.
that's why I had a field day. So yeah, definitely was the case with that, Sam. Yeah, for
And
sure.
like I think so what and Elliot, you also did that video on like bro culture as well, which I think is a
I love that video.
yeah,
That's
and it's a
brilliant.
really like important one for a lot of guys.
Yeah,
Like and I mean obviously I work with a lot of men who have that kind of um tendency to want to do the same things as their friends are doing or wanting to be part of that subculture,
yeah,
of
And
that
Momin is the
everyone.
leader of the bro culture.
I'm the leader of the bro culture.
He's the founder.
I'm literally the antithesis of bro culture. Like I'm the complete opposite. But no, like that's a like you breaking down that fear of not fitting in as a certain kind of
Mm.
man in a certain kind in an environment is like huge for people. But Maha, like what I'm also curious to also know is that do you also have you had that fear in like in like sitting amongst like a group of women as well?
Oh, 100%. Like my whole teenage life, I was very, very alone because I was very anxious in school, and like I had very little friends, and I just,
What kind of like
always
fears pop
confessed.
up for you as like when sitting because with men it's like okay I need to be a bit more like a broy kind of thing or whatever like
Yeah.
how is it with women?
I think with us is like who has the best dress, who has the best look, who
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
Wow.
the best man, who's good at relationships, and it's all about just showing off.
Wow.
Um,
Interesting.
I didn't have that like in me growing up. As you know, like I don't even wear brands. I'm not like,
Yeah.
that flashy. So I always felt like comparing myself to that. And I was like, I just don't fit and I'm not good enough. I'm a loser. So it's always putting myself down in
How
that
much
sense.
how much was that like like was a thought process for you or is it still like a thought process for you like when you're going out and there's a plan to meet your female friends or whatever like how like in getting ready for it like how much does that factor into your thought process?
I would say very, very, very little because I
Okay.
just like I don't care about having friends anymore. It's like I feel like as you get older, it just like these things start, fade away in a way. But I do sometimes when I see like I think it's the same thing with guys. When I see like a very feminine, confident woman, I can see my older self coming up saying like, "Do I have what she has?" Like, and
Yeah.
start going through that. I was like, oh my God, that used to be
Elliot
a
gets
thought
that as
for
well.
me.
Yeah, all the time, 24/7, bro.
Yeah,
No,
and
I think
honestly, like I
yeah,
feel that amongst like a group of men sometimes as well, because I mean I don't come off. I'm not like effeminate necessarily, but I'm also not super like masculine either. So like sometimes I feel just the odd one out when like sitting amongst like a lot of men. And Maha, like in Dubai, like they're like most guys are like really jacked and like and exactly
Gross.
and just like being around the environment is just like what's going on here. So like there's a certain kind of
I
and
remember when I came to see you
yeah.
in your building, and there were like a bunch of guys, and we were walking together, and they were just like staring, it's like,
Yeah,
what is this?
exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
what is
Exactly.
this?
So there is that kind of thing. I think that that happens with like so many different groups as well, of people. And it even happens with like I think ideologies as well. Like when you're if you're part of even kind of like a small ideology or like a same way of thinking, or even like you like the same kind of music, I think there is
Mhm.
certain pressure that people feel to abide by what the larger group is basically saying.
Mm.
You know, we're also very good at beating ourselves up, right? We are amazing at that, aren't we? Soon as we make a mistake, oh, why did I do that? And we just constantly berating ourselves. And funny enough, the call before the one-to-one call that I was on here before this real talk was how they've made a mistake with their work and they were just in that self-torturous cycle. They just gave up on the weekend plans. And I said, but what is that going to solve? Right. I
Mm.
understand that because I've been there because you put so much emphasis on this mistake that you've made. You're like, well, that's it now. My life comes to a halt.
Mm.
But that doesn't solve anything. So I think the biggest thing in recovery is that you get very good at just moving on, right?
Yeah.
Adapting, adjusting, pivoting. Something goes wrong. Okay, how do I solve the problem, right? Because so many people, especially OCD sufferers, are just stuck dwelling on what could have been or what should have been, right? But you can't do anything about that. Self-reflection's key here because you can reflect on what you did wrong. That's great. I encourage that. But the problem is when you don't only reflect, you then hate. You then just beat yourself up endlessly, whilst you sacrifice the future, don't you? Because you spend too much focus on what you could have done rather than what you can do about it. And I spent years like that with relevant false memory OCD, years and years and years replaying, analyzing, going over things to no avail. I did not succeed once in changing anything because I'm yet to build a time travel machine you can go back and change the past. All you've
Mm.
got is how you can learn from it and move on. No matter what situation. If I was in jail, I'd be thinking like that. If I was homeless, I'd be thinking like that. Because what choice have you got? All you got is right now and how you move on from it. There is no point. Nothing productive comes from, oh, what could have been. Nothing at all.
So I also have an interesting question to like ask you guys as well. Like, are there because I mean, at the end of the day, even if you're recovered or whatever, like we're still human beings, right? So like, where are some moments where you sometimes do feel a bit self-conscious, if you do at all?
Um, I think maybe sometimes for me, maybe sometimes when I'm at the gym and like, I'm not like this big buff guy. You see people like lifting some heavy weights and you sort of start. It's not like I'm wishing for that, but you see it and you think, oh yeah, they look good. It would be cool if I had that because I'm more rational about it. I accept myself and I know that I don't need that. I don't tend to tie things to my whole being based upon one thing. And I think that's a big problem when we say, oh, once I have a six pack or once I've got a great job, then I'm good, then I'm worthy. But that's when we get into problems. So I think for me, it would be that if I was in the gym. But to be honest, Momin, not very much anymore. I'm sort of solid in myself now. I
Okay.
don't really have that. Yeah.
Yeah, Mum, that's a great question. I think with me, right, and this is an interesting point. With me, it gets in where sort of the self-consciousness and the self-awareness around, and you'll probably laugh at this, like knowledge and how smart you are.
Yeah.
Now, for example, if I'm with friends, right, and this is because when I was stuck with OCD, I lost so much interest in life, right? News articles, I didn't give a shit. What was going on in the world, I didn't give a shit because all I cared about what was going on in my brain
Yeah.
and living in the past, right?
Same. Same.
So
Yeah.
when I talk to my friends about things that have happened, maybe it's politics, maybe it's financials, I don't know, whatever we were talking about, it can be like, yeah, but you don't really know this because you were so stuck,
Yeah.
right? So now, being recovered, I'm very fascinated by all kinds of things. I'm constantly learning and expanding my knowledge, but it can be a bit self-aware because maybe you didn't quite catch that when you were stuck, right? So it feels like you're playing catch up a bit. But yeah, again,
Yes.
it's this is my situation. I have to move forward. You can't just dwell on the past.
Hard,
Yeah.
hard relate. Hard relate on that, by the way. Maha, what about you?
The one that I can think of is again, like drawing back to the point of social anxiety around being around women, like I think it's, you know, when you become a rational person, it's like it's harder for me to do girly stuff, like in a way where it's like you know, caring about this brand, knowing this brand,
Yeah.
knowing the latest trends. It's a struggle for me, and sometimes I can feel like, you know, self-conscious or isolated a bit. And it's like
Yeah.
I just it's I'm just too rational to be like, what's the point of this? Or like, you know, there's other things
Yeah.
that go on. And it does make me feel like, oh my God, like
And man,
what more
that's
do
what I was saying. But with the new beliefs, when you become more rational, you can feel a bit sort of left out or a bit of an outsider as such,
Yeah.
because you're like, hang on, I'm not, maybe it's some fad or some trend. They're like, I don't really give a shit about that trend, because you can just see it for what it is. Like TikTok, social media, I don't give a crap at all. And it's like, I got nothing to talk about there, because it doesn't interest me. Nothing productive comes from watching TikTok for me.
And I
Yeah.
think one of the mistakes that people make as well when they come in is, and like you guys have probably like, heard someone like in the group or someone say something about this, like when they start working on their own rational thinking, they start like trying to explain things rationally to their husbands or wives or like their friends or whatever. And it's
So
like,
that goes down well.
And it's like, no, like, and especially like, there was this one guy, he was like, my wife was like going through like a problem, or she was like annoyed with something or whatever. And then I was just trying to be like, hey, so like try and look at it rationally. I was like, never do that, because like nobody wants to like sit down and be like, oh, let's be rational about this. They just want to talk and let it out or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're not OCD sufferers, so like the rules are a bit
I
different for them.
I only speak rationally to people that want to speak rationally.
Exactly. If someone
I
is
don't
open
try.
to an
It's a
opinion,
waste of time.
exactly. If someone is really open to that opinion and trying to have like with my friends, for example, we often end up having conversations where there's a topic and we're trying to discuss it from all sorts of, different perspectives and angles. So naturally,
Yeah,
that's where I do bring in
yeah.
whatever I'm thinking about it. But like in
But it's
day-to-day
so
setting,
hard.
it is hard, but
It's
like,
so
I mean,
difficult.
if a female friend is telling me about like a boy who's just like, she's like, oh, he's being trapped to me, I indulge. I'm like, yeah, he's being like a shit boyfriend right now. Like, I don't sit down to be like, hey, let's break down your beliefs over here. Like, I don't need to do that.
It's also a skill that, I used to have this in politics, and I get this now where I'll be debating politics with my friends, for example,
Mhm.
and I just don't say anything, because you learn to just bite your tongue, because you're
Yeah.
like, well, what's the point? Because you realize that if you try and be rational, you're going to get shut down very quickly. And it's a good one for frustration tolerance, when you're like, no, I could raise a point now. I want to raise a point, but no, I'm not going to say anything, because you just know it just get slammed back in your face, which is fine. It's all part of accepting people have different views, but it's hard. I don't tend to approach quite difficult conversations when you're going to get shut down, because you don't really get anywhere.
Yeah.
It's the hardest with family, hey?
Oh
Because it's
yeah,
like there's so much about them, and like
yeah,
especially if you see them going through some anxiety or depression, you're like,
yeah, definitely.
what? Nope, nope, you don't
Yeah,
need help.
it's like, what's the demand? What do you mean? What the demand is? What's the must? What do you mean the must? I'm not catastrophizing anything. The whole world's fucking shit. Oh yeah, of course you're not.
I think, yeah, I mean, family is where I don't even go into anything.
Mm.
Only with my brother, because my brother and I have like very like open discussions like about many different topics in the world. But other than that, with family, we're sitting at a dinner table and they're going to be saying something so irrational and just so rigid and black and white. But I'm just quietly having my
Well, I
dinner.
tend to laugh. I tend to just laugh at it, because there's no point getting
Yeah.
involved in it.
I have a non-reaction, and my family has come to know me as someone who is just like just dead and in a way. But that's only because like I just don't want to indulge in those topics.
Yeah.
Like
And
I
that's good now, because with Christmas coming up, right? How many of you are going to have Christmas conversations, talking around the table, and it's just
Yeah.
like, oh my God, that's
and
just
meeting
so
friends
rough.
and cousins and family that are going to be
Oh.
like, saying things that are going to hurt you, offend you, annoy you, all those things. Yeah.
You know,
And
the best, the how would I say that? Like recently I had an event, and it showed me how good rational thinking and accepting is. Like it just, when it's not forced as well. So I met my mom like a couple of weeks ago, a couple of days ago, and I haven't seen her for 4 years. Like we haven't been talking, right? Um, and I met her and I was anxious at the start, obviously, but um I met her and she was like crying and, trying to like, put the blame on me and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I don't have tears. I'm not crying. And I'm just like, it's like, I can't fake it. And I had this realization. I was like, in the past, I would be so, like, I would put myself so much down. It's like, oh, you're so bad. You don't cry when you see your mom. It's like,
Yeah.
how terrible. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, it's not
Yeah.
within my control. Like, what can I do? And it's just like, wow, it's so good. Like being rational.
I think like you become comfortable with understanding that your reactions and opinions can be vastly different from other people. Because some people might also be other people can be also indifferent to things, but you might be feeling some things about it. But I think there's a certain acceptance of the things that you cannot control. That you cannot control your reactions, and you also cannot control like, another person's like natural reactions to things as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So like speaking of Christmas, Sam, because you brought that up, like I think Christmas can or any kind of like festive occasion, I think it can be both either like an anxious time for people because it's supposed to be a happy time or whatever. But at the same time, I think for someone like me, festive occasions also became at times like a relief as well. Oh, of course.
I did magic that out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's got OCD on it, or no?
No, not quite.
Yeah. But like festive occasions can also become like a good relief and downtime as well because you're not then doing like the regular things and it can help for people. It can help make them feel like it's a break for them. So like with the holiday season approaching, like or like in the past when you were suffering with OCD, how would you guys go through that period?
Not very well. Not very
Mm.
well. I really struggled around Christmas time
Hmm.
because I had the beliefs that, like we covered in the recent webinar, Momin, about fear of not being able to fully enjoy yourself, right? And that was the problem with Christmas because I put so much pressure on you should be enjoying this moment, right? It's got to be going. Can you take me seriously with this hat on, by the way? You probably
Yeah.
Yeah,
can.
yeah. I mean, keep it on.
Um,
I'll actually just show you guys a Christmas like postcard kind of thing I just made.
But yeah, I had that internal pressure ramped up. Like you should be enjoying this. OCD can't ramp up for this. And I remember times my Christmases were just like I just felt so shit. 2018, that always sticks out. I hardly left bed. I got out of bed really late and just didn't really engage. And my advice to people is just, you gotta just fake that. I know you're gonna feel like shit. It's just you are gonna feel like shit. If you're new on the journey, you can't expect to feel any other way than you're like
Mm.
shit. Okay, because the pressure comes on naturally because you see everyone else having a great time. Maybe your whole family's coming around or you're going somewhere and it's this big happy celebration and you just feel depressed, guilty, ashamed, anxious. You got no other choice, right? Your only other choice is you lay in bed and avoid. Well, you didn't want to do that because that gets you nowhere, right? So you got to get out there, even if you're panicking, even if you're anxious, even if you're depressed, you get out there because that's how you get your life back on track by gradually facing those days and rolling through with it. Because when you look back, you'll remember what you did, right? You're not going to
Yeah.
remember how anxious you felt on Christmas Day 2024. You remember what you did, who you saw, family members that aren't here
And I think
forever,
like
had a great
a
time with
really
them.
good way to do that, I always say to people, is try and get involved in like Christmas
Yeah.
activities. Like
Mm.
And get over involved. Get over
yeah, I
involved,
mean
right? Don't
like
avoid
if
anything.
people are playing board games together, like take
Yeah.
that initiative. Be the one to
Yeah.
make suggestions of what movie do we want to watch together.
Yes.
Get
I want to watch
involved
the
in
OCD
cooking.
movie. Can I watch the OCD movie? That's for that.
Yeah.
I want to watch Momin talk on the channel.
Basically, I mean, like, or just like, go in the kitchen, like, get involved with making like drinks and food. Like, it's a
Yeah,
really good
definitely.
way of because if you're just like sat on the couch or in your room or scrolling on your phone, and like that's not going to put you in like in any Christmas spirit. You're not giving yourself even just a 1% chance of being in the Christmas spirit.
That is the worst place you could be, just scrolling on Christmas Day.
Basically,
Yeah.
this is a thing that I
Yes.
made. But like, you guys won't get it because have you guys played Catan? Any of you?
No.
No.
Okay, then never mind. Anyway, there are some like references to Catan over here, the board game. It's really fun. But anyway, basically you gather resources to make cities. So these are all resources that I've made. I'm giving it to someone with whom I play Catan over here. That's basically the
Uh,
like thing.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
Elliot, what about you?
Yeah, so the way I look at Christmas, Sam touched on it there. It's just another day, right? There's a lot of people around the world who don't enjoy Christmas. There's people homeless on the street with nothing and no family. So I think although you are suffering at this time, it's important to try and have some gratitude, because there are some things you can probably still enjoy at Christmas. Maybe a nice meal, maybe having a roof over your head and that sort of thing. And then like for me as well around Christmas, like I didn't really have harm OCD, but I'd have it ramp up at that time and on my birthday as well, because you're around loved ones, you're around family members, and you really don't want to be experiencing like any sort of disconnection or sort of bad feeling towards other people. So for me, it sort of just tended to rear its head at that time. So you just have to wear that. You might find that you're in the same position when it does sort of get a bit more intense at the
yeah.
Christmas time. So you just need to wear that, allow it to be so. You're not going to build Rome in a day and have miracles. Like Sam said, the demand that you must enjoy Christmas is very irrational because it's just another day. It's just one of 365 days in a year. I
And
also,
it
as
is
well,
also it's also a great chance to build frustration tolerance, isn't it? Like
yeah,
if you can get through Christmas Day feeling like crap and
yeah,
dealing with people that are probably quite difficult to deal with, let's be realistic. Family members can be quite hard to deal with at times, especially if you've got
yeah,
quite different views. So it's a great chance to build that. And
yeah,
with recovery, what you do realize is that your frustration tolerance increases significantly. So you've always got to pounce at the opportunity to build that because you're going
yeah.
to need high frustration tolerance in recovery.
Yeah, and just another thing as well. I remember like I'd have like fears of rejection around like what if I've got presents for my family and they don't like the presents and
Oh, good one.
they think badly of me and
I like
it's,
that.
it's like the pressure to socialize as well and yeah that sort of used to play a
I
part for me.
never I never had that fear because I'm a good gifter. Like
And you
I
don't,
I
that's because you
I
don't
know
buy
how
any presents for anyone.
Yeah, it's weird. I used to have that.
not this time. Not this time. But no, Maha, go ahead. What were you about to say?
I was thinking as well, like when you feel anxious around Christmas or any event, thinking like I should enjoy it, I should feel like that. You're also, I feel like subconsciously assuming others are fully enjoying it, thinking
Mm.
everyone is like, having the best time of their lives. And what helped me is like change that is thinking that in reality, those people are thinking about how do I enjoy this event, this person, like, visualizing, obviously not compulsively, but thinking like this person is thinking, oh my God, look how I'm dressed. I feel like shit. Everyone is doing better than me. And just visualize everyone doing the same thing. And that just like, brings it down. It's like, oh, it's not perfect. It's not la la land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everyone's having like a certain amount of pressure, like in their own way, Like I think like a very typical like mother figure in the house would probably be like concerned about is everyone well fed or like did I make everything fine and am I serving everyone coming over, like all those sorts of things as well. So I do think that that pressure like kind of like happens that way, but and you also don't want to be the kind of like the, I don't know, the rotten fruit with everyone kind of like having a good time. You don't want to be like the one in the sour mood in the middle, and just like kill
Yeah.
the vibe. So, which is also why I think like faking it on, especially on like something like Christmas is really important because there is a certain element of, I genuinely do believe this, there's a certain element of faking it that also becomes believable a little bit sometimes, because then you're just like going with the vibe of things as well. Like I've had that with so many festivities back at home that we've had across the years, even though internally like my contamination was completely consuming me, but me just faking being part of like the camaraderie with my cousins and my uncles and aunts and whatever, like it just kind of like put me in a slightly better mood in that way.
Yeah. So I've got a question for you guys. So 2025, with fears of rejection, you're just at the start of the journey. How do you tackle it? What's the first
Oh,
steps you start taking
oh,
to
oh,
those fears
oh.
of rejection?
Oh, who's gonna answer that?
Who's going to answer
What the
that?
hell? So I think this is what I will say.
Mm.
And I was just discussing this on a one-to-one today, is that someone that I work with has like a really bad fear of rejection, but what I was saying to them was that when you're breaking down fear of rejection, of course, like you can tackle fear of rejection as a general notion of like why it wouldn't be so bad if people thought of me in a bad way. However, do try being a bit specific about it as well. Try looking at it in specific contexts, right? So, like, is it because most people that come in, they don't have the fear of rejection only in the specific context of like one thing. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, they're also afraid of like relationship rejection. They're afraid like
Yeah.
what their parents might think of them. They're also
Mm.
afraid what at work people might think of them. So do look at it like in different contexts, because the connotations of rejection from parents is a bit different, from your wife or your husband or partner is a bit different, from your children is a bit different, at work is a bit different. And look, because when we're then looking at realistic ways of the worst outcomes and the ways of adapting to those challenges, if our worst case scenario came true, again, they're different in every situation. So
Mm.
that, I think, in like going into 2025, if someone is struggling with fear of rejection, I think that would be my advice to them, is to
Mm.
try
Yeah.
and break it up into smaller pieces.
Yeah. Is also really highlighting that human beings survive rejection, right? You don't need rejection to stay alive. And I know it sounds crazy saying that, but when you look at a lot of the fears, it's because
I
people
think you
just think
meant to
they,
say, sorry, I think you meant to say human beings don't need like acceptance or validation to survive.
Mm.
what did I say?
You said
You said
rejection.
you
Did I?
said they don't need rejection to survive.
We know what you mean, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Or do
Cool, cool. Yeah, so human beings can survive with rejection, right? Yes, that makes sense.
yeah.
So, and it's understanding that although we like to be approved, we never need it. And when you look at it and when you start breaking this down on calls, you realize is that you can actually adapt and adjust and not just survive, you can actually thrive even being rejected, right? Because look at all the things that one can do whilst being rejected. Now, we're not saying rejection's good. Like, we're not saying it's a nice feeling. Like, nobody wants to be rejected, right? But when you bring down the catastrophizing, you realize it's nowhere near as bad as you're making out in your head, right? Realistically, if you were rejected, even by many, many people, you still get up the next day, you have breakfast, and you can still read a book. You can still go for a walk. You can still exercise. Let's go to the extreme. Let's say you were in jail and you were rejected in jail. You can still get up in the morning and you'd have your breakfast. You'd follow the disciplined routine, right?
And
Whatever
I
you got
would
in time.
even like, for example, if even if your like husband or wife, let's say, like reject you for something, I mean, realistically, what happens? Rejection is like people rejecting like a part of you or like a certain action that you've done or something like that. Even in their rejection of you, there's still opportunities and moments to be able to bond as well. Like you may
Yeah.
have had like, let's say, an argument with your partner, but then the next hour you guys are still sitting together and having a meal, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
both things can coexist at the same time. There's the argument that's happened and the sour feelings from that argument while you're still doing a bonding activity as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go. So I think rejection as well, like when we actually get rejected, it can actually act as redirection and show us where we need to improve. Like, although it's not always like a good thing, it's unpleasant. If it say you're getting rejected by your partner for, I don't know, being too lazy or not doing enough around the house or whatever it could be, that could just be a sign to you to say, oh, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm not doing so well in this area. Maybe I need to improve and grow in that respect. So rejection is actually like very positive. And like say as well, say somebody does reject you, it might be just some random person, right? You know that you don't need to waste your time with them because you'd rather invest your time and energy into people that actually want to get on with you. So it can sort of weed out people in that regard as well. And it's like
Yeah.
success and failure. You can't get success without risking failure, sort of thing. It kind of comes down to that notion as well. So I think there's some silver linings and positives that you can take from rejection, and that helps to break down why it's not actually so bad and final when we do experience it.
It's
Yeah.
like criticism as well. You need
Yeah,
criticism to grow, to
yeah,
change, right? To
yeah.
get
Yeah.
better at things. So
Sam, you look stupid as hell. So,
thank you. Well,
but
as Elliot's advice, that rejection equals
yeah.
redirection. So
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
redirect my life now. Thank you.
Exactly.
But guys, I do have to cut it slightly short because
Right.
I have to be somewhere. But again, good talk. And I think, like, again, fear of rejection is something that we will most likely cover again in the future as well, because there's
We
tons
could talk all
of
day
stuff.
long about that, can
We can
we?
talk all day long, yeah. We can also do another one in the context of, again, looking at it in the new year and seeing how we want to go in
Mhm.
life. So guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking out the time.
Thank
And
you.
whoever's
Thank you.
watching,
Good
have a
night.
good holiday season. Happy Merry Christmas, and we will be uploading more videos as well before that, but still.
Oh,
But yeah, Merry
Bye,
Christmas, guys.
guys.
See
bye bye,
you.
guys.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.